Jai Hind all of you. After the first lecture that we have done on the overview of DBMS, now let's start with the next lecture, that is the database system concepts and architecture, in which we will see the various concepts which are belonging to the database plus the various architectures which can be used in the database system. These are the various outlines of this particular lecture, that is we will see the various data models, then what are the categories of the data model, then what is the history of these data models, these are few terms, that is schema, instances and states. Then 3 schema architecture we will see, what is the data independence which we can achieve using the 3 schema architecture, then what are the DBMS languages and the interface which is used for accessing the databases, then we will see the centralized and the client server architectures for the DBMS. So let's see the first topic for today's lecture, that is the data model. So here what is the data model? Basically data model, it's a set of concepts which are used to describe the structure of the database, that is what should be the structure of the database, the operations which can be performed for manipulating these structures, then what are the constraints that has to be imposed upon the database. Then in the data model constructs and the constraints, basically when we talk about the structure of the database, we have various constructs. So here constructs are typical elements and their data types, that is elements for, say if I talk about a student table, then the name of the student, age, that would be the elements of the table. These all comes under the construct, as well as the group of elements, that is the entities, the various entities within the table, the records or entities we can say table, the relationship among such groups. These are the constructs which define the structure. And when we talk about the constraints, constraints are some restrictions on the valid data, that is for, say I want to just enter, there is a field regarding the date. So in the date field it should not be like that we put the name or the age of the person. So date of birth, for say there is a field, then in that only the date should be there. So we can impose the constraint that date should go into the date of birth. So these constraints, they can be enforced at all the times. So now let's see what is the data model operations. So when we have to use the database, we need to apply certain operations. So operations are used for on the database for the data retrieval and for performing the updates, that is by accessing the constructs. Constructs, as we have seen in the earlier slide, that constructs can be the entities, the records and the various tables. So using those constructs we can access the database and we can retrieve the data or we can make the changes in the data. So operations on the data model may include basic operations such as insert, we can perform insertion of a new record, new table into the database, we can delete the records, we can update, that means we can change any field or we can update the entire table or the entire database also. Then there can be certain user defined operations also that can be performed. For say I want to compute the GPA of a student, if I have a student table in which I have inserted the marks of the student. So this can be the user defined operation. Then update the inventory, I want to update the inventory, for say there is an inventory in a particular stock company and I want to keep track of how many items are there in the inventory. So we can as new items are purchased, we need to update the inventory also. So it can be a user defined operation. So depending upon the applications, we can have user defined operations also. So let's see the categories of the data model. First we have is the conceptual or the high level, that is also called semantic data model. This is most important data model because this is the model that would be perceived according to the client. So it provides concepts that are close to the way many users they perceive the data. For say I am making a database for a particular organization, then how they view the data in their organization, that would be give the view of the conceptual data models. This is also called entity based or object based data model. Then next we have is the physical data model. This is also the low level or the internal data model. That means internally how my data within the database would be stored. So it provides concepts that describe details of how data is stored in the computer. These are usually specified in an ad hoc manner. That means through the DBMS design and administration manuals. That is at the basic level how the data would be stored in a sequence or randomly, or how the data type would be defined. Then third is the implementation. This is also called representational data model. So it provides the concepts that fall between the above two. That means at the top level we have is the conceptual, then at the bottom we have is the physical one. So in between these two we have is the implementation. Implementation, it provides the concept that falls between these two. For example, relational data models which are used in many commercial systems. We will look into the details what is the relational data model. Basically relational data models are, that is how we define the internally how we are stored, then above that how it can be perceived or implemented within the programming languages. That is as a table view we are giving the model to the database. Then there are certain terms within the DBMS that we should be aware of. First is the schema. Schema is basically the description of a database. Description is in the form of structure. What is the structure of the database? The various data types and the constraints on the database. So this is called the database schema. Then schema diagram. So we can represent the entire schema in the form of a diagram. So it's an illustrative display of most aspects of a database schema. Then we have the schema constructs, that is a component of the schema or any object within the schema. For say we have a schema of a university, within that student course, this would be the schema constructs. So let's see, next we have is the database state. State is the actual data which is stored in a database at any particular moment of time. That is the database, the content within the database is called the database state at any particular time span. And in case we keep on changing the database, the data within the database, so this particular database state also keeps on changing. This includes the collection of all the data in the database. This is also called database instance. So at any moment of time, the present state of the database, that is including its data, that is called the database instance. This is also called occurrence or the snapshot. So these can be the various other names for the database instance. So the term instance is also applied to the individual database components also. So we can have a record instance, that is a particular record can also be called as record instance. Then we have table instance. So a particular table, for say in a database, university database, I have a student table, course table. So a particular student table, for say it is like a table instance, and a particular record within the table is a table instance, and entity instance also. Similarly, record and entity, they are used interchangeably. As we know that now that database state, it refers to the content of a database at any moment in time. Now initial database state, this is actually when we have initially loaded the database into the system, the initial starting level of the database, when we have entered the data within the database, that is called the initial database. Then next is the valid state. Valid state is at any point of time the data within the database, it should be valid, in the sense it should adhere to all the constraints and the structure of the database. So a state that satisfies the structure and the constraints of the database. Then distinction is the database schema changes very infrequently. That is, the schema, we do not change the schema very often. It sometimes, very rarely, we change the database schema. If there is a requirement from the organization or the database users, then only very less the schema is being changed. But database state, it changes every time the database is updated. So every time a new record is entered or the previous record is deleted or we are making the changes, the state would keep on changing. So there can be many instances of the database state. We have other terms also. Schema is also called intention. State is also called extension. So these terms are interchangeably used. So here is an example of a database schema. It's a university database. So we have the various constructs within this. We have student, course, prerequisites required for a particular course, section and grade report. So these are the constructs within the database schema. So when we make a schema, these would be the way how we will make the database schema. So we give the name of the entities at the top, then what all fields would be there for each entity. For say the student entity, we have is the name, then student number, class, the major. Within the course, we have is the course name, course number, credit hours, department. Prerequisite, we have is the course number, the previously required requirements, then prerequisite number, section, that is a student, he would be allotted to which section, the section identifier, course number, semester, year, instructor for that particular section. Then grade report, student's grade, that is a student number, section identifier and the grade for that particular student within that particular section. Here is an example of a database state, that is a state when we have inserted certain records within the database. Here the course has few of the entries in this. Similarly, the section table also has few of the entries. Grade report entity also has few of the records, and similarly prerequisite. So these, when we have inserted the data within the database, that is your database state. Now let's see the architecture, which is being very much important architecture from the database point of view, that is a 3 schema architecture. Now before we go into the 3 schema architecture, let's see why this is important to know about this architecture. Basically the idea is, the most important characteristic of this particular architecture is that it provides us program data independence. That is, the program and data, they both don't depend upon each other. They are independent of each other. That means if I am making any changes in the program, I need not to make any change in my data. Initially when we were doing in the C programming language or C++, data and program, they were in the same program. But now we are differentiating between the program and the data, and it also supports multiple views of the data. Plus we have a requirement that many of the users they would be having different requirements and they would be viewing differently a particular database. So it should support multiple views of the data. Though this particular schema is not very much explicitly used in the commercial DBMS products, but it has been used in explaining the various database system organization. Now when we see, then this particular architecture, it defines the DBMS schemas at 3 levels. So here first is the internal schema, that is at the internal level to describe the physical storage structures and the access path, that is how physically the data is being stored and how we can access particularly that particular data using the index. So this is your physical data model. Then we have is a conceptual schema. It is at the conceptual level to describe the structure and the constraints for the whole database for a community of users. So this is, it uses the conceptual or a implementation data model. Then third is the external schemas. They are at the external level, which are used to define the various user views. Usually the uses the same data model as the conceptual schema. So here is a figure which shows the three schema architecture. That is, at the top level we have is the external schema, which provides us the external level. Here we can have multiple users that would be viewing the data, and then we have is the conceptual level, that is conceptual schema entity, entity relationship based data model it is using, how it is being perceived by the various users. Then internal, how physically the data is being stored on the database. So this is your internal schema. So these are the three levels. This three schema architecture, it provides some mapping up among the schema levels are needed to transform the request and the data. So as in the previous also slide we have seen that these are the levels, and in between that we have is the mapping. That is, we map conceptual and external levels, and we can map the conceptual and the internal levels. So the program, it refers to the external schema. The programs or the applications which would be used by the end users, they form the external schema or the external level and are mapped by the DBMS to the internal schema for execution. Data extracted from the internal DBMS level is reformatted. Now I want to retrieve or return back the result, so it need to be reformatted to match the user's external view. That is, formatting the results of a SQL query for displaying in a web page. So we need to format the data when we are returning the data from the internal level to the external. So it provides, this particular architecture also provides us the data independence. Data independence, that is, we have two types, logical data independence and the physical data independence. Let's see what is the logical data independence. The capacity to change the conceptual schema without having to change the external schema and their associated application programs. So here what we can do is the middle schema, that is the conceptual schema. We can change that particular schema. In that case we need not to change the upper, that is the external schema which forms the application program. So we need not to touch the application programs for changing the internal or the conceptual schemas. Physical data independence, that is, we can change the internal schema without having to change the conceptual schema. Now the middleware, it need not to change if we want to change the physical level. For example, the internal schema may be changed when certain file structures are reorganized or new indexes are created to improve the database performance. So physical level, if we are inserting new more data types, then plus we are introducing more indexes, we need not to change them. So when a schema at a lower level is changed, only the mappings between the schema and the higher level schema need to be changed in a DBMS. That fully supports the data independence. The higher level schemas, they are remained unchanged. So hence the application programs need to be changed since they refer to the external schema. Now let's see the various DBMS languages. First is the data definition language, that is DDL, and second is the data manipulation language, that is DML. Data definition language, DDL. This particular language, it is used by the DBAs, that is the database administrators, database designers, the persons who would be designing the database, to specify the conceptual schema of a database. So when we need to specify the data types, the constraints at the physical level, then we use is the DDL. That is, I have to define the schema, the example that we have seen for the university, I need to define the student, then the prerequisites, instructors table. Then for that particular case we use is the DDL language. In many DBMS, DDL is also used to define internal and external schemas, that is the views. Then second is the language is the data manipulation language, that is the DML. This is used to specify database retrievals and updates. So here whenever I have to change the actual content of the database, that is, then I have to use is the data manipulation language. So here DML commands, they can be data sublanguage, can be embedded in a general purpose programming language. So we can embed these DML commands within the our application programs which are created using languages such as C, COBOL, C++, Java, nowadays PHP, .NET. So we can include the commands within that programming languages. A library of functions can also be used to access the DBMS from a programming language. So alternatively, we can fire the DML commands on, can be applied directly, that is called the query language, such as SQL, structured query language. Directly also we have the editors and we can perform the SQL queries onto our database. Types of DML, we have two types, that is a high level or non-procedural language, that is in which we are not writing the procedures particularly. For example, SQL relational language, in that particular case we can simply write the work that need to be done. So these are set oriented and specify what data to retrieve and rather than how to retrieve. So for say I want to access the data regarding a particular student, I need to just specify that select asterisk all the details regarding that particular student. So we would be concerned about what data need to be retrieved. We are not at all concerned how it need to be retrieved. So these are also called declarative languages. Then second is the low level or the procedural languages. Now for say retrieve the data one record at a time, then one record at a time, and I need to process and do certain operations on that data. For that we need to write the procedures. So constructs such as looping, if I am performing looping on that particular tables, I need to create the procedural programs to retrieve multiple records along with the positioning pointers. Then interfaces that we can use to access the database. Standalone query language interfaces are available. I can fire the SQL queries using SQL star plus in Oracle, that is an editor through which I can write my SQL queries. Then programmer interfaces for embedding the DML in the programming languages are also provided, that is handlers are there through which we can embed the DML commands within the programming languages. Then user defined interfaces, that is menu based. We have form based interfaces through which we can access or we can provide the data within to the database, or I can access the data from the database. Graphics based interfaces can also be there. For example, I am providing the data for I am accessing the Gmail. So there must be database at the Gmail end in which we may be having the username and the password. So our data would be matched with that particular database. So these all are the interfaces through which we can access the database. Next we have is the centralized and client server DBMS architectures. These architectures, first we have is the centralized DBMS, that is it combines everything into a single system, including the DBMS software, hardware, application programs and user interface processing software. So all the parts of the DBMS, that is the DBMS software, then requirement of the hardware plus the programs which we are providing plus the user interfaces into a single piece. Users can still connect through a remote terminal, however all processing is done at the centralized level. So here is the architecture that shows the how the centralized architecture is there. The hardware, all the CPU controllers, then memory, disk and the input output devices. operating systems, the DBMS operating system plus application programs, they all are put into a single piece and they can be accessed using the monitors, terminals through the network. So this is a centralized system, that is at one side we have kept the entire database. Then we have is a client server architectures. In first we have is the basic two-tier architecture. In the two-tier architecture we have is some specialized servers with specialized functions. We have print server, file server, DBMS server for say web server, email server. So clients can access the specialized servers as needed. So here is a diagram, that is a logical two-tier client server architecture. So here what we have is, through the network the clients are connected to the various servers. So here a printer server, regarding the printer database it would be maintaining. Same way the file server, if we have certain files within an organization, that would be taken care by the file server. So here we have is the DBMS server. So here a layer has been divided, one layer is of the servers and other layer is of the clients. So this kind of architecture is a two-tier architecture. Mostly people go for this particular architecture, but if we want to have common interface for web applications, we go for the three-tier client server architecture. So in this from we server and the client, we have an intermediate layer, that is the application server or the web server. So it stores the web connectivity software and the business logic. Now I want to segregate the business logic from the server, so I can have an intermediate layer. So everything regarding the business logic, any constraint or the business point of view, anything we want to insert into our application, that would be implemented at this particular intermediate layer. So the business logic part of the application used to access the corresponding data from the database server. So it acts like a conduit for sending the partially processed data between the database server and the client. So three-tier architecture can enhance the security. So basically the purpose is to enhance the security. So here we are actually we are segregating the database and the client. We are not putting everything at the server level. We want to segregate the business logics from the actual storage of the data. So for that we have is the intermediate layer. So database server only accessible through the middle layer. Now at the back end, basically we use it for web applications, because now we access the web applications over the internet. Many people would be using the same application. Now we if the data is being segregated from the logic of how we are implementing that particular application, then it would be the security for the data also. So clients cannot access the database servers directly. So here is the architecture diagram. This is a very important architecture. Here we have is the three-tier architecture, that is we have clients. The clients, they would be accessing the actual database servers through various interfaces. As we are accessing the Facebook application, I may be accessing the Facebook application through the through mobile, or I can use it through laptop or through my desktop system or iPad. So there can be various kinds of interfaces through which we can be accessing the actual application. So these are the GUIs, graphical user interfaces, or they can be the web interfaces. So this is called the presentation layer. Now if I am accessing the application from the mobile, so the view of that particular application should be according to my mobile screen. Similarly, if I am accessing it through the laptop, so the view of that particular GUI, the presentation of that application should be according to the laptop. Similarly for other devices. Now at the bottom we have is the database server, that is the database management system. Here is actually where my data would be stored. Here is where the query processing to access the data would be done. So database service layer, this is called the database services layer. Now in between these two, now we have from the two-tier architecture, we have is the third layer, that is the intermediate layer. This is called the application server or the web server. So if we are doing the programming in the Java, so there also we have various advanced programming interfaces which provide us to segregate this. We can do it using the application servers or the web servers. So clients, they do not directly access the database server. They can only access the database server through the application server or the web server. So these are the application servers where our web pages would be stored. So client would be accessing the web pages through this. Here we have is the application programs that would be deployed also. So application programs, they first, the client would be calling this particular web application program from this particular server. It would be displayed to the client. Then whenever the client wants to access certain data, then the request would first go to the application server. From this server, the request would go to the database server. So clients, they do not directly access the database server. Even if we talk about the present day applications, even the applications which are on the cloud, we are not aware where our data is actually. So the millions of users are there of the Facebook. So people are not aware where actually our data is being stored. So this is how the security of the data is being done, by segregating the application logic from the database. So this is called the business logic layer. This is being implemented also, this particular, even in case the application users keep on increasing, this application program would be divided into various, they can be installed on the various systems over the cloud, and people can access the database. These application programs can be accessing the same database from various locations all through the world. So this is how presently the three-tier client server architecture is being used. Thank you so much. This all we have done in the lecture 2. We will continue further in the lecture 3.